Hello everyone, I am Hussein and in this video we're going to talk about conditionals, loop, and arrays. In C# we have three ways to define conditionals, using if-else statements, switch case, or using a question mark. Let's consider this example that you're going to write an application which requires you to check if time is between 6 a.m. to 12 a.m. Display good morning. And if the time is between 12 a.m. to 6 p.m. display good afternoon. And else otherwise display good evening. For this, to write the if statement, we first start by writing if. There's a code snippet to make your code faster to write. You just need to double tap right now. As you can see here, it will automatically write a template code for you, and you just need to replace things for that. But I'm not gonna use this for now. So I hit escape, just show you how it is. Then we just add parentheses. After that, we just need to write our condition, and then write the statement. So if you're looking to write more statements, because the next thing you write, it will not gonna run under this condition. It will run automatically, doesn't care about this condition. But if you're going to write any other statement, you need to add these curly braces and add your statement in here. We call this block a block of code. As you remember in our previous videos, we talked that this is also called as a scope. So now we can have multiple statements to run if this condition is passed. And now if you're going to write another condition, you can simply write else if, add parentheses and write the condition. And then add curly braces to be able to write multiple statements. And if you're going to say that any condition other than what I've just said, you just write an else. And then write your statement. So now let's implement our example here. Let me delete this part. And in here, in our condition, what it says if time is between 6 a.m. to 12 a.m. display good morning. Right here, let me just first define a variable called hour. Write it as 7. Now I write the hour is greater than 6 and hour is lesser than or equal to 12. Then I will write console.writeLine good morning. The other if says if the time is between 12 a.m. to 6 p.m. display good afternoon. So in here I will write the hour is greater than 12 and the hour is lesser than 18. Let me fix this. And in here I will write the console.writeLine. Good afternoon. And else we will write a good evening. Console.writeLine. Good evening. And now, because it is ugly to have these curly braces while we don't really need them, we don't have too many statements, and these curly braces are occupying a line of code. We can simply remove them so our code will look much more pretty. Let me put a breakpoint here and we will see how it goes. Now, see, because hour was 7, as we defined it to be, it's now here. And here is the result. Good morning. There's another way for working with conditionals, and that's when you want to use a switch statement. For the switch statement, we just write switch, then we add the parentheses and write our variable that we are going to put the condition on it. And then using the curly braces, using a case, for example, we can say case if the time, if the hour is 1, which is not really a good fit for this example, but you can get the point, right? Write the console, let me write this as 7. I'll write a console as a good morning. And then we will write a break when we are using our switch as a conditional statement. And if you're going to do anything else, much like this part, you can simply write a default and we can say good evening. Now we're going to use the break, and there you go. It was the second type for working with conditionals in C#. The third type is using the question mark. For this example, we write our condition comparison. Say we write hour. If the hour equals to 7, right? 7, and then put a question mark, and then write what you are going to get from this comparison, right? This statement here will only pass if this comparison evaluates true. So in here we just write good morning, then we put a colon here to say what if this just didn't meet? What if this comparison failed and evaluate to false? Well, I say we write this here, good evening. Though I know it is not a good example for this question mark, but you can get the point. So you see a red line in here which the compiler says, oh, you cannot just do it. But why? Because in this comparison, the compiler tries to return the result of this comparison, and there's nothing back here for it to receive it. So I will add a variable called greetings. Now the result of this comparison, the whole thing here, will put into the greetings. Now I will write the console, the write line to greetings. I have made some examples here which you can access to it. Some conditional types that you can see here and use it. For example, in here I've used the question mark inside an if statement, which the if conditional The if condition will check if this statement is true, so it will run this. Else, it will check the other things, right? And stuff like this. Now let's talk about arrays. Well, consider a situation where we need to store 5 integer numbers. What we're gonna do, we're gonna probably introduce 5 integers here, as you see, and then initiate them, and then just write them to the console. Very easy, right? Now let's assume we have to store 5,000 integer numbers. Are we going to use 5,000 variables? To handle such situations, almost all programming languages provide a concept called array. An array is a data structure which can store a fixed size collection of elements of the same data type. An array is used to store a collection of data, but it is often more useful to think of an array as a collection of variables of the same type. So now, instead of defining all these numbers, all these variables, we can define an array variable that will store as much as we need data. Look at this example. In here, we just have defined a variable numbers, which is an array of integer. You see? And then we just wrote a new integer array, and then we just initialized this array with these numbers. There's an alternative way of defining an array, is exactly the same thing that you wrote, but in here we can say how many elements can this array have. All arrays consist of continuous memory locations. The lowest address corresponds to the first element, and the highest address corresponds to the last element. Now, as you can see here in this example, application, to retrieve the element from this array, you write a bracket, and then inside the bracket, you write the index of that element. Now, I want to run this application to show you how it works. So let me put a breakpoint here, and then run our application by pressing F5. Now in here, we have our numbers because we had these statements, and now we're at this point. So once I press F10, you see the first element is 10. Now another F10, the second element, which is here, with the index of 1, we could retrieve the second element. And now with the index of 2, we can retrieve the third element, which is here. Can you see it? Very simple concept. Now let's talk about loops. We have 4 types of loop in C#: while, do while, for, and for each. Now consider this example. Now consider that we have an array variable called numbers that is initialized with these numbers. Now I'm going to show you how the while loop works. We just pass this variable into the function of the while loop. Now I'm going to open it. For the while, we will write while and then add the parentheses, and then we will write the condition comparison. If this condition comparison evaluates true, then this block of code will run. In this line of code, I said what index of this array had what value. As you see, I retrieved the value of the array by the index, and then I added 1 to the index. So the index will be now 1 for the next time when it comes down. Let me show you this by running this app. As you see, the index is 0, but the numbers variable have 5 elements, right? So in here, we will see that the index is 0, and we will have the first element, which is stored in the index 0 of this array variable. And the value is 10. Now, let me just go to the next line. Now I add 1 to this index. So I said whatever the index is plus 1, the result of this adding shall be assigned to the index. So now the index is 1 for the next time. The index is still 1 and not reached to 5 or more. So the loop still continues to run. The next time, I just wrote something on the console. Now we add 1 more to the index. You see, the index is now 2. Another time, the index is now 3. Another time, the index is now 4. For the last time, the index is 4. As you see, the 4 index is the last element of this array. And this array had only 5 elements. So the 4th index is the last index of this array. And the value is 50. So I run it. Next. You see, the index is 5. Now it shall not come to this block of code. Let's go. As you see, we just ended it, then it just goes to the next part. Next loop is do while loop, which is almost the same, but at the start you just write a do and then a curly braces, and then you just write your statements, and then you write while and then the condition. Now, the difference between the do while and while is that the do while will run at least one time. As you have noticed in here, I just have used another way of adding 1 to the index. When you write index plus equal to 1, it means index assign index plus 1. Both of these statements are the same. The reason that I use this, which is very oftenly used, is because it's more neat. The next loop is a for loop. For the for, we have 3 sections. First is a variable that we will initialize it here. Let's say index. I say 0. And then we add a semicolon to go to the next section. For the next section, I will write index lesser than numbers dot length. As you see, this part, the second part, is our condition comparison, and then the last part is our step. I will write index plus 1, or I can alternatively write index plus plus, which is the exact same thing. See? Doesn't matter if you write the index plus equal 1 or index plus plus, both means the same thing. And then in here you just write your statements just like what you had in a while loop. The difference here, because you introduced this variable here at the first part and you had this step, you don't need to add these things inside of your code block. Now the other loop is called for each loop, which you write the for each and then you will write a variable. I named it number, and then you write in and then the array variable. In this way, you iterate through the variables stored inside of your array. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video and thank you for your support. Leave a like if you like this video, subscribe and hit the bell so you will be notified once we publish our next video. Thank you.